Listen close, family, because the fortress just fell from the inside. The multi-million-dollar empire that William Leonard Roberts has been building brick by brick for 17 straight years just cracked wide open, and the man the world has known as Rick Ross will never wear that armor the same way again. For over a decade and a half the planet watched Rick Ross walk into every room like the ceiling belonged to him. Rick Ross laughed off federal audits. Rick Ross laughed off street feuds. Rick Ross laughed off every internet jab with a diamond-loaded wrist and a sip of champagne that cost more than most people's rent. But late yesterday afternoon the golden curtain got yanked off the stage, and what the world saw underneath it stopped the entire culture cold. A trusted insider inside Rick Ross's own home, his personal private chef of 4 straight years, leaked 45 seconds of raw, unedited, high-definition security footage pulled directly from inside the master office wing of the 109-room Promised Land estate. And here's the situation, the footage does not show a boss. The footage shows a broken, weeping man clutching his own head in trembling hands. You need to sit with that for a second, because in that clip Rick Ross is not performing. Rick Ross is not posturing. Rick Ross is not clowning anybody. Rick Ross is falling apart in real time, completely undone by the white-hot psychological warfare unleashed on him by his eternal opposite, Curtis 50 Cent Jackson. The tough, untouchable street kingpin persona has completely evaporated into pure raw panic. And here's where it turns, 50 Cent didn't just repost the leaked footage of Rick Ross crying. 50 went nuclear. 50 launched a secondary, calculated digital detonation that threatens to expose the exact private begging messages Rick Ross allegedly sent him from behind that mansion office door. Stay locked in for the next few minutes because we're breaking down the microscopic details caught inside that dark office, the chef's explosive public statement, the leaked speakerphone audio buried underneath the sobs, and the corporate wildfire that is currently forcing Rick Ross's team into full-scale emergency damage control. You cannot look away for a single fraction of a second. To understand how one 45-second clip could dismantle a 17-year mythology, you have to rewind and see the sheer scale of the war that brought Rick Ross to this breaking point. For almost 2 decades, the feud between Curtis Jackson and Rick Ross has stood as the deepest, most personal, most calculation-driven rivalry in the entire history of modern hip-hop. This isn't one of those little back-and-forth radio beefs that burn out in a summer. This war has been fought inside federal courtrooms. This war has been fought inside private asset disclosures. This war has been fought inside boardrooms and inside relentless daily digital trolling campaigns. And 50 Cent, being 50 Cent, has always understood one thing that Rick Ross underestimated: perception is leverage, and leverage is everything. Cutting the fat off this, the match got struck all the way back in 2008 at the BET Hip Hop Awards. According to hip hop lore, 50 Cent, sitting on top of his global G-Unit throne, gave Rick Ross a cold passing glance in a backstage corridor. To Rick Ross, who at that moment was aggressively constructing a hypermasculine drug kingpin myth around his Maybach music brand, that single glance became a lethal insult. Rick Ross fired first, dropping the notorious Mafia music track in early 2009. But 50 Cent didn't answer with a rap verse. 50 went surgical. Within weeks, 50 Cent pulled up official Florida Department of Corrections records and hung Rick Ross out to dry as William Roberts, a former correctional officer who spent 18 months working inside a Florida state prison. 50 stamped him with the label that has haunted him ever since, Officer Ricky, a moniker engineered like a scalpel to execute his street credibility on the spot. For any other artist in any other era, that revelation would have been a career-ending kill shot. But you already know Rick Ross did something remarkable. Rick Ross refused to fold. Instead, Rick Ross leaned harder into the luxury narrative, transformed Maybach Music Group into a real powerhouse, signed hitmakers like Meek Mill and Whale, and started wrapping himself in the visual armor of extreme wealth. To flex financial superiority over 50 Cent, Rick Ross bought Evander Holyfield's former Georgia mansion, a sprawling 54,000-square-foot fortress featuring a 350,000-gallon pool, private highway access, and a dining hall built for 100 guests. Rick Ross used that estate as a visual weapon, filming himself poolside in iced-out chains, taunting 50 Cent with photographs of vintage cars and diamond stacks. For years, Rick Ross rode that opulence like a chariot every time 50 Cent stumbled in court. Most notably, the 2015 verdict ordering 50 Cent to pay $7 million over a leaked private tape, the verdict that triggered his highly publicized Chapter 11 filing. Rick Ross spent that entire stretch mocking 50 Cent's finances. Rick Ross bragged on podcast after podcast that his legal team had inspected 50 Cent's bank records during discovery and felt sorry for him. Rick Ross positioned himself as the wealthier businessman, the better label head, the unbothered boss. But here's what Rick Ross underestimated: Curtis Jackson plays the long game like nobody else in the culture. While Rick Ross was flexing on camera, 50 Cent was quietly building a media empire the size of a small country. 50 launched the multi-billion-dollar power television universe. 50 locked in Las Vegas residencies. 50 secured major film production deals. 50 opened a massive studio compound in Shreveport, Louisiana. And once 50 Cent had financial immunity locked in through his television empire, 50 Cent turned back around and pointed the barrel at Rick Ross with terrifying, disciplined focus. Over the last year, 50 Cent launched a white-hot digital campaign engineered to dismantle Rick Ross's biggest boss image piece by piece. 50 mocked Rick Ross endlessly for appearing as a special guest opening for older acts on the Millennium Tour, claiming Rick Ross could no longer sell out a venue on his own name. 50 publicly clowned Rick Ross on Instagram for cutting the grass on his own 300-acre estate, spinning Rick Ross's favorite hobby into proof he couldn't afford professional groundskeeping. And when viral photos surfaced of Rick Ross waiting at a commercial airport gate, 50 Cent took the trolling nuclear, reportedly wiring Rick Ross $40,000 publicly, with a note saying the money was for a jet charter since the biggest boss was somehow sitting in economy. The pressure inside Rick Ross's inner circle had been building like a white-hot steam pipe. On camera, Rick Ross kept the theatrical grin, kept offering 50 Cent jobs cleaning yachts, kept holding up million-dollar rings on podcasts. But behind the walls of the mansion, the weight of global mocking, mounting corporate pressure, and shifting industry tides was quietly cracking the foundation underneath the biggest boss brand. The stage was set for a total emotional collapse. Nobody, however, expected the ultimate betrayal to walk out of the kitchen. The detonation hit the internet at exactly 3:15 p.m. yesterday afternoon. And it didn't drop through a normal news outlet, it erupted on a private subscription-based insider channel before getting violently cross-posted across every major hip-hop relay hub on X, Instagram, and YouTube. The footage, captured from a high-angle security camera positioned inside Rick Ross's private master office suite, carried a verified digital timestamp from earlier that same morning. The visual is jarring. 2 decades of celebrity myth-making stripped away in 45 seconds. The room sits dark, lit only by the ambient glow of a massive desktop monitor on a polished mahogany desk. The desk itself is buried under open financial ledgers, corporate contract folders, and official legal notices. And in the plush leather chair, wearing a silk designer robe with his head buried in his arms, sits William Leonard Roberts. On the monitor screen directly in front of him, playing on a loop, is 50 Cent's latest viral trolling broadcast, a video picking apart Rick Ross's tour ticket sales, his fast food franchise overhead costs, and his commercial flight photos. For the first 15 seconds of the clip, Rick Ross sits frozen. Then everything shatters. Rick Ross pulls his hands back, revealing a face twisted by pure, unfiltered emotional agony. The man who spent 15 years telling the world he was untouchable begins weeping uncontrollably. Heavy audible sobs bounce off the office walls as tears run down his face. Rick Ross grabs a stack of paper documents off the desk, shuffles them with trembling hands, and slams his fist into the wooden surface in absolute desperation. Rick Ross wipes his eyes with the sleeve of the silk robe, breathing hard, completely broken by the weight of global humiliation. And the leak came wrapped in a written statement from Rick Ross's longtime personal private chef, a man who had cooked inside the Promised Land mansion for over 4 years and abruptly packed his bags and vanished from the estate right after uploading the file. The chef's chilling explanation for breaking his non-disclosure agreement went straight to the internet's jugular. He wrote that he was posting the footage because he couldn't take the lies anymore. He said he had cooked for Rick Ross every single day for 4 years. He said he had watched Rick Ross flash a fake arrogant smile for the Instagram cameras and then walk straight into the kitchen screaming at the house staff because 50 Cent posted another meme. He said Rick Ross had completely broken down that morning after opening certified legal letters on his desk. He said the biggest boss persona is a total lie. He said Rick Ross is terrified, drowning in corporate debt, watching tour partners pull out, and the entire household has been walking on eggshells for months while Rick Ross cries in the office over internet trolls. He said the public needed to see the real man behind the curtain. The internet did not react. The internet detonated. Within 90 minutes the clip had racked up over 8 million views across relay channels. Comment sections argued whether the footage was real, staged, or an AI-generated deepfake. The very idea that Rick Ross, the larger-than-life rap titan, was sitting in a silk robe weeping over 50 Cent's Instagram posts felt like a fever dream. And then, just as the internet started swallowing the raw shock of the crying clip, the story dropped its first catastrophic twist. A revelation that turned a sad private moment into a corporate execution. An independent digital audio forensic team took the leaked 45-second video and ran the background hiss through high-frequency isolation software. And what they pulled out of the ambient noise flipped the entire narrative sideways. Playing softly in the room during Rick Ross's breakdown was an active speakerphone call. And on that call, a senior corporate executive from a major international music distribution conglomerate was delivering a cold, mechanical, devastating ultimatum. The executive told Rick Ross that the board had reviewed the Q2 brand perception metrics. The executive told Rick Ross that the constant online ridicule over the tour billing and the commercial flight optics was actively damaging the commercial value of the upcoming album rollout. The executive told Rick Ross that the board had officially voted, and if Rick Ross could not resolve the public situation with Curtis by Friday, the label would exercise the emergency clause and freeze the $3 million marketing budget for the entire project. Read that again. Rick Ross wasn't crying over a funny meme. Rick Ross wasn't crying over a petty Instagram joke. Rick Ross was weeping because 50 Cent's relentless calculated trolling campaign had successfully breached the corporate boardrooms behind the scenes, triggering a financial freeze that threatened to paralyze the actual Rick Ross music business in real time. The biggest boss wasn't dealing with hurt feelings. The biggest boss was watching his own revenue engines get switched off in front of his face. By 7 p.m. the fallout was spreading across global digital networks like an uncontrollable wildfire. Trending tags for the chef leak, the mansion tears, the promised land breakdown, and the 50 Cent Ross implosion occupied the top 4 spots on X globally, generating 15 million posts in less than 6 hours. Mainstream outlets, blogs, and hip-hop commentary channels scrambled to cover what was quickly becoming the biggest viral celebrity scandal of the decade. And then the second twist hit, and the scandal escalated from public relations disaster into full digital execution. If anybody expected 50 Cent to show a single grain of mercy toward a rival caught in a private breakdown, you already know 50 Cent. Instead of taking the high road, 50 Cent downloaded the leaked crying video, uploaded it straight to his main Instagram account, and paired the footage with a dramatic, sarcastic classical violin score. The post cleared 1 million likes in under 30 minutes. But 50 Cent wasn't finished. 20 minutes later 50 dropped the ultimate warhead, a high-resolution screenshot of a private, encrypted direct message thread sent from Rick Ross's verified handle just 3 weeks before the leak. And the messages, sent in the dead of night, revealed a side of Rick Ross the public had never seen. In the messages a desperate Rick Ross was pleading with 50 Cent to call off the social media attacks. Rick Ross wrote asking to talk man-to-man off the internet. Rick Ross wrote that the internet was affecting the tour dates and the business. Rick Ross wrote asking 50 Cent to sit down privately in Miami, work out a truce, and move past everything. Rick Ross wrote, "We both got money, let's stop letting the internet laugh at us." And 50 Cent captioned the screenshot with a caption that instantly ripped through every platform. 50 wrote that he told everybody Rick Ross was opening for Bow Wow and crying behind closed doors. 50 wrote that you can't talk about buying his music masters on podcasts and offering him yacht cleaning jobs and then slide into his DMs at night begging for a truce because your tour dates aren't selling. 50 wrote for Rick Ross to keep that same biggest boss energy he had on the Joe and Jada podcast. 50 crowned the mansion's kitchen staff with the Chef of the Year award for exposing the truth. The humiliation reached a level so suffocating that Rick Ross's corporate management and legal teams got thrown into full chaotic panic. At 9:30 p.m. Rick Ross's lead corporate attorneys fired off cease and desist notices to major platforms demanding the immediate removal of the crying video and the direct message screenshots. The notice claimed the security footage was stolen intellectual property obtained through a criminal violation of a domestic employment non-disclosure agreement, and it threatened multi-million-dollar lawsuits against any outlet distributing the media. But that aggressive legal response backfired. Catastrophically. By filing formal legal demands confirming the video was stolen from the internal security servers of the Promised Land estate, Rick Ross's own attorneys inadvertently gave the entire world official legal verification that the crying video was 100% authentic. Rick Ross wasn't acting. It wasn't a deep fake. Rick Ross's own legal team had just confirmed to the planet that the biggest boss was indeed sitting in a silk robe weeping at his desk over 50 Cent's trolling campaign. The internet smelled blood in the water, and the feeding frenzy escalated into absolute chaos. The global hip-hop community and the mainstream media fractured hard over the ethics of the leak. Timelines transformed into a digital war zone with over 25 million users actively arguing about the total destruction of celebrity personas in the digital age. On one side, 50 Cent's massive fan base, internet trolls, and longtime Rick Ross critics celebrated the moment as the definitive final round of the 17-year war. They framed the leak as the ultimate reality check for a culture built on superficial flexing. One viral post reading, 50 Cent literally broke a grown 300-pound man down to tears without lifting a finger or dropping a diss track. This is the most legendary psychological victory in the history of hip-hop beef, cleared 120,000 reposts in 3 hours. Another read that you cannot hold up $1 million ring and call yourself the boss ever again after your own private chef catches you sobbing on camera over Instagram memes. But hold up, on the opposite side, an increasingly vocal group of cultural critics, mental health advocates, and hardcore Rick Ross supporters launched a fierce backlash against both the private chef and 50 Cent. Their argument was that leaking private security footage from a man's own home crosses an immoral line, obliterating the sacred boundary between public entertainment and personal human suffering. A prominent hip-hop podcast host stated during an emergency stream that what that chef did was evil and illegal, that every single person watching this has broken down under stress at some point, and that recording a man in his private office experiencing a mental breakdown over his business falling apart and then selling it to the internet for clout is disgusting. Others argued that 50 Cent celebrating a private mental breakdown showed how toxic the culture has become. Meanwhile, the commercial fallout inside the music industry started moving at terrifying, white-hot speed. Prominent industry insiders and podcasters spent the night analyzing the catastrophic impact on the Maybach Music Group brand. One went live to over 400,000 concurrent viewers, laying out the corporate reality that boardrooms don't invest in a brand built on unshakable confidence and infinite wealth when the leaked video shows the man crying over internet memes while the distributors threaten to freeze the promotional budgets. The illusion is dead. Investors do not put capital behind a boss who breaks down under internet pressure. That chef didn't just leak a video. That chef wiped out tens of millions of dollars in corporate leverage in a single upload. Major brand partners, private event promoters, and corporate sponsors have reportedly launched emergency calls, terrified that association with a heavily mocked, collapsing brand image will contaminate their own promotional campaigns. The untouchable image has officially shattered into 1 million pieces. And at exactly 11:45 p.m. last night, as the internet was reaching peak exhaustion, a revelation that threatens to turn a private breakdown into a full-scale corporate and legal investigation. An investigative entertainment journalist specializing in corporate intelligence published a bombshell update revealing the true background of the private chef who leaked the security footage. According to corporate registration records, tax filings, and employment logs, the chef was not just an independent culinary worker hired off a random domestic staffing platform in Georgia. Prior to joining Rick Ross's estate staff in early 2024, the chef had spent 3 years working as an event logistics coordinator for a major media production entity directly tied to 50 Cent's G-Unit film and television division. Let that land carefully. That implies a level of long-term tactical infiltration reading like a Hollywood espionage thriller. Did 50 Cent intentionally position an operative inside the walls of the Promised Land estate, quietly waiting for the exact moment of emotional vulnerability, to catch Rick Ross on camera and deliver the final career-ending kill shot? The legal implications are mind-blowing. If Rick Ross's legal team can prove the chef was operating as an active agent under an indirect arrangement to gather private footage inside the mansion, this situation stops being a court of public opinion story and marches straight into a federal courtroom for corporate espionage, wiretapping, and criminal invasion of privacy. The countdown has officially begun. Rick Ross's legal team is reportedly assembling a massive federal lawsuit. 50 Cent is teasing the full unedited release of the direct message exchanges. And the chef has just announced he's going live tonight to drop part 2 of the mansion security archive. Has the biggest boss truly been dropped to his knees by the ultimate insider betrayal? What other private moments were captured inside those mansion walls? The clock is ticking, the files are dropping, and the truth is spilling out faster than anyone can plug the leak. This is the most explosive high-stakes personal exposure in the history of hip-hop commentary, and the fallout is escalating by the second. We are actively tracking every legal filing, every private leak, and every social media update to bring you the freshest developments the second they hit the wire. But we need to hear from you right now, because this situation is fracturing the whole culture. Do you think leaking private footage of a grown man crying inside his own home crosses a dangerous line, or is everything fair game in a rap beef? Has 50 Cent officially delivered the final career-ending blow to Rick Ross's legacy? Do you believe the chef was a long-term G-Unit plant, or was this just an opportunistic betrayal for internet clout? Scroll down right now and drop your raw, honest verdict in the comments. Let's spark a real debate. If you want to stay 3 steps ahead of the algorithm, if you want the microscopic breakdown of part 2 of the chef's leaks the second it drops, and if you want emergency alerts on this story as it unravels, do 3 quick things. Smash that like button so this story pushes deeper into the global algorithm. Hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss an emergency update. Share this across every platform with anyone who still thinks celebrity personas are real. Lock in your notifications, the next drop lands soon. The next 48 hours are about to redefine the culture, and you don't want to be the last one to hear it.